श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रम् धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणम् वन्दे रम्यजामातरम् मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भाम् नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यम् अच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणम् प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः।
श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रम् धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणम् वन्दे रम्यजामातरम् मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भाम् नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणम् प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः। अपगतमदमानैरन्तिमोपायनिष्ठैरधिगतपरमार्थैरर्थकामानपेक्षैः निखिलजनसुहृद्भिर्निर्जितक्रोधलोभैः वरवरमुनिभृत्यैरस्तु मे नित्ययोगः। We continue from the earlier class where it was mentioned Ittai Vedangalam Rishiganam Alvarhanam Acharyarhanam Virumbinarhal. Two important aspects as far as the uniqueness of the Ashtakshara Mahamantra is concerned. First one is that it has, if a mantra or theory or whatever, if it has to be accepted by masses, it has to be accepted by the senior persons belonging to that field. So, unless it is authenticated by the senior most persons belonging to that field, it will not be accepted by the people at large. Therefore, here, Pillai just 1 minute. It is number 13, which we had started to discuss in the earlier class. Ittai Vedanganam Rishiganam Alvarhanam Acharyarhanam Virumbinarhanam. So there are two important aspects, as I mentioned earlier. The first aspect is that it should be accepted by the senior most people belonging to that field of study, like Sampradayam or whichever field it belongs to. And secondly, it should not be derided by others, in the sense it has to be positively accepted by them and not be derided. These are the two important aspects. So how the Ashtakshara Mahamantra is acceptable to one and all is the question, which is answered here by Pillai, who says, Ittai Vedangalam Rishiganam Alvarhanam Acharyarhanam Virumbinarhanam. Not only the Vedas, but the sages have accepted it, the Vedas have accepted it, the sages have accepted it, the Alvars have accepted it, and Acharyas have accepted it. So all four of these have in unison accepted and acknowledged and also eloquently mentioned about the greatness of the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. So we have seen in the earlier class how the Vedas have very respectfully spoken about this Ashtakshara Mahamantra, and also the Rishis in the Puranas, which we will just go through now. And then how the Alvars and Acharyas have also mentioned about this. So, Shishta Parigrahamundo enna. So in the earlier sutras or Churnikas, Bidlalokacharya showed that the Vasudeva Dvadashakshari mantra and the Vishnu Shadakshari mantra have been in a way appropriated by the Advaitins and Dvaitins. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, it has to be taken with a pinch of salt, because if you say tomorrow, somebody says, we are also practicing the Ashtakshara Mahamantra, that doesn't mean that we should give it up. That is why I keep mentioning that it should be taken with a pinch of salt, in the sense to explain the greatness of this mantra. Many a times some aspects are mentioned wherein other mantras are shown to be a little bit lesser value. So Ashishta Parigraha exists for the other two mantras, whereas Shishta Parigraha exists for this mantra. So where is it? Aradhamade Vishnu Gayatrine Vyapaka Mantratrayattai Trayatayum Shallu Bala Shallu Hiravalavil Prathamatire Narayana Shabdattai Pradhanyena Pratiparityanam. So we have seen the instances where the Vedas have very explicitly mentioned about the greatness of the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. Then you have the Rishis who have specifically mentioned in the Puranas, Itihasas, etc., which we are going to study now. Yatha sarveshu deveshu nasti narayana paraha tatha sarveshu mantreshu nasti chashtakshara paraha. And if you happen to have the what we know as the Pramanatirita in Sanskrit, which means all the references to the quotations that have been quoted in the course of the text have been listed out in the alphabetical order, and also their sources have been given. So here I don't find in the book that I am using, I don't find the sources of many of the quotations. So you can try and find out from the other books that you have. So this particular passage says, Yatha sarveshu deveshu nasti narayana paraha tatha sarveshu mantreshu nasti chashtakshara paraha. These are the sayings of great sages. So it was mentioned, Rishihalum, Vedangalum, Rishihalum, Alvarhalum, Acharyahalum. So how the Vedas have commended the greatness of Ashtakshara Mahamantra, that we have seen earlier. Now we are actually studying the commendation and also recommendation of the Ashtakshara Mahamantra by the sages. So one particular shloka is as follows. Yatha, just as there is no God who is superior to Lord Narayana, similarly there is no mantra which is superior to the Ashtakshara. This is one shloka. Another shloka is Bhutordhvabahu Adyatra Satyapurvam Bravimi Vaha He Putra Shishya Shrinuta Mantro rashtaksharat paraha namantroshtaksharat paraha. A particular sage tells as follows, probably it is sage Vyasa who is telling this. Bhuta urdhva bahu adya atra satyapurvam bravimi vaha. In the Upanishads, we find that when a very important statement has to be mentioned, it begins with tadetat satyam, which means what is going to be told hereafter is the truth. Then we may have a question as to why is it mentioning that what I am going to mention hereafter is the truth in some places. Does that mean that there are some untruths or falsehoods also in the Upanishads? It's not like that. Though the entire Upanishad talks about the truth only, certain passages deserve more respect, and we have to take that into account more than the other passages. So here also the sage says, Satyapurvam bravimi vaha. Now I am going to raise my hand and tell all of you. He actually addresses his sons and also his disciples. He putra shishya shrinuta. O sons, O disciples, listen to me. Now having raised my hand, I am going to tell something that is the truth. That means it is the truth of truths. It can never be false. So he says, Adya atra satyapurvam bravimi vaha. Satyapurvam means, once again reiterating that I am talking about the truth only and nothing else, or talking about the truth. I am mentioning this to you. Please listen to me. What is it? Namantro ashtaksharat paraha. There is no mantra that is beyond the Ashtakshara or greater than the Ashtakshara or has greater value than the Ashtakshara. So this is one shloka by a Rishi. Another pramana is as follows. Sarva Vedanta Sararthaha Samsararnavatārakaha Gatirashtaksharo Nrīṇāṃ Apunarbhavakaṅśinām. So the meaning is as follows. The Ashtakshara Mahamantra is the Sarva Vedanta Sararthaha. It is the essence of all the Vedantas. So we can take the Vedanta, which means Vedanam Antaha Antimam Bhagaha Vedanta, which refers to the Upanishads. So the purport of the Vedas are explained in the Upanishads. And the purport of the Upanishads, of all the Upanishads put together, is the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. So Sarva Vedanta Sarartha and Samsara Arnava Tarakaha. It is capable of delivering us from this vicious samsara or material world. And Gatirashtaksharo Nrīṇāṃ Apunarbhavakaṅśinām. Punarbhava means repeated birth. So we all know an Atman, a Jivatma, he undergoes bondage, which means again and again he is born and dies, born, he is born, he dies, once again he is born. So, Jatasya dhruvo mrityuhu dhruvam janma mritasya cha, etc. is explained in the Gita. But for those who do not want to be born again, Apunarbhava Kaṅśinām. Punarbhava means being born again in this world. So Apunarbhava means those who do not, Apunarbhava means not being born, that means liberation. Apunarbhava Kaṅśinām. Those who want to attain liberation, their only sum and substance is the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. Gatihi Ashtaksharo Nrīṇāṃ Apunarbhava Kaṅśinām. So this is very, very beautiful shloka about the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. Then you have one more very famous shloka. Arta vishanna shithirascha bhitaha ghoreshu cha vyadhishu vartamanaha sankirtya narayana shabdamatram vimukta dukkhaha sukhino bhavanti. So artaha, those who have are undergoing great misery. Vishannaha, those who are very sad. Shithilaha, those who have been overwhelmed by the circumstances. Bhitaha, those who are afraid of anything. It might be afraid of death. It might be afraid of impending problems, impending different types of situations, etc. And ghoreshu cha vyadhishu vartamanaha, and those who are experiencing very severe fatal diseases. All those, they can sankirtya narayana shabdamatram. Just by mentioning or pronouncing the word Narayana, they vimukta dukkhaha, they will be rid of their miseries, and sukhino bhavanti. So they will attain happiness. But in this context, I would like to mention a small anecdote mentioned by my Acharya. It's a very significant incident. But this will not be generally told by the regular lecturers or regular people who give the regular scholars who give discourses due to various reasons which are not very relevant now. So once my Acharya was experiencing a great severe headache. So he was experiencing great pain because according to Ayurveda and also our own experience, pain in other parts of the body is relatively endurable, whereas pain in the head is generally very much unendurable. We feel very, very bad. It's very difficult to endure the headache. Then suddenly my Acharya remembered this shloka, Artaha vishannaha shithilascha bhitaha ghoreshta vyadhishu vartamana sankirtya narayana shabdamatram vimukta dukkha sukhino bhavanti. Oh, then it says, even if you are experiencing a huge, very fatal disease or very serious disease, if you are sad, if you are having any misery, just by mentioning the word Narayana, you will actually be rid of those diseases and attain happiness. Then immediately he said Narayana, 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 but the headache did not go immediately. Then he started thinking, is it that what they have mentioned in this shloka is an exaggeration? Or is it false? Because I told Narayana, I told the word Narayana, I pronounced the word Narayana, but I have not, the pain has not gone. Probably after I take a pop in an aspirin or some allopathic tablet, after half an hour or 45 minutes, the pain might go. Then he started thinking, and he remembered the words of his own Acharya, who was a realized person, that Sankirtya Narayana, when we say the word Narayana, what should happen to us? So suppose I say, I saw a bird. Then the person who is listening to it, he immediately understands it and he says, yes. For example, if I say I saw a crow, suppose Keshavadas, he tells me, then I will say, oh yes, okay, where, or something like that. I will understand, I'll say yes. So when he says I saw a crow, I understand it, and I immediately, when I listen to the word crow, the image of a black medium-sized bird comes to my mind immediately. Or if he says, I saw a sparrow, or I saw a parrot. As soon as I listen to the word sparrow, the image or the picture of a small bird comes to my mind. And if he says a parrot, then immediately the picture of a medium-sized bird having a green color. Generally, parrots are green, but you have different types, of course. So, assuming that it's a green parrot. But what happens when we say the word Narayana? So now, even as I am telling now Narayana, it is not having any specific image is not coming to my mind. Or we may remember the Archa form. For example, Tirunarayana, our presiding deity of Melkote. Of course, Archa Avtara is really one of the greatest forms of the Lord. But we have not realized the Paramatma Tattva in the Archa Avtara. Though we have respect, though we have veneration towards the Archa form, still we don't feel, as I mentioned some time back, we go to another incident mentioned by my Acharya. So a person goes to a temple and he says, oh, the Lord has given me wonderful darshan, beautiful, exquisite, all the exquisite, he is adorned with exquisite ornaments, all the Shankha, Chakra, etc. Oh, very beautiful, very beautiful. And after half an hour or 45 minutes after we have come back from the temple, if somebody asks offhand, have you seen God? Then what do we say? An honest person will say, no, I have not seen. Then, no, you have seen. No, I have not seen. I can tell you I have not seen. Then what did you see in the temple? You said you had wonderful darshan in the temple. You said exquisite darshan and exquisite ornaments. Oh, that God, is it? Okay. Yeah, that God I have seen, of course. That means we are not ourselves convinced that He is the Supreme Lord because we have not had the realization of the supremacy of that Lord. So ultimately, the difference between the Alvars and Purvacharyas who had the realization, because even in the case of Dhanurdasa, I want to mention this. So we all know in the story of Dhanurdasa, that is Ramanujacharya, the episode of Dhanurdasa. So he was known as Pillavaranga Villidasar in Tamil. It is translated as Villidasa is Dhanurdasa in Sanskrit. So what he used to do, his wife's eyes were so beautiful that he always used to continuously see and enjoy the beauty of the eyes of his wife. And even when he used to come and move around in Srirangam on the banks of Kaveri as well as in the streets of Srirangam, he used to hold an umbrella so that the sun's rays should not touch her, because she is so delicate, because her eyes are so beautiful. So when this continuously happened, people started censuring. And ultimately this happened in the presence of Ramanujacharya also once. Then immediately Ramanujacharya asked his disciple to bring him to his presence. And then said, what is this? What are you doing? Why are you always holding an umbrella to your wife? Then it seems Dhanurdasa said, I am enamored of the beauty of her eyes. So I cannot do anything but worship her, the beauty of her eyes. And if we worship somebody or something, we automatically give our entire being or self to that. And are always involved in looking at it, enjoying its beauty, etc. That's why I am doing it. Then immediately Ramanujacharya told, suppose I show you the eyes that are better than this, what will you do? Much, much more beautiful than the wife of your eyes, the eyes of your wife. Then he said, then I will worship that by all means. Why not? So immediately the story goes that Ramanujacharya took him to near the sanctum sanctorum of Srirangam temple. And he made him worship Lord Ranganatha and see the eyes of the Lord, how beautiful it is. So the story goes that immediately Dhanurdasa became enamored of the eyes of the Lord Ranganatha, and he stopped looking at the eyes of his wife with the mentality that he had earlier. And he became an inseparable devotee of Ramanuja. Then my Acharya asked, so we have had the Lord, darshan of the Lord several times. Do we feel like that? Why? The answer is, immediately Dhanurdasa had the internal darshan of the divine eyes of the Supreme Lord, which was triggered by the darshan of the Archamurti that existed in Sri Lanka. So, our samskaras are so much less that we are unable to realize this. Even Tiruppanalvar said, "En namudinai kanda kangal mattondinai kaana." So immediately the darshan or the vision of the external vision of the Archamurti used to take them internally where they would have the vision, because it is said, "Namamsa chakshuhu abhivikshatetam." The external eye cannot cognize the Supreme Lord. Even the Alvar say, "Nenjennum ukkannel kaanu unaru." In several places it has been mentioned. Yogi hridhyanagam. He can be realized in the heart by the yogins, by the rishis, by the acharyas, alvars, etc. So here also, when the word Narayana is mentioned, immediately if we have the vision of the Supreme Lord Narayana, or if we can remember the vision that we have had earlier, then definitely Artaha, Vishinnaha, Shitilaha, Bhitaha, Goreshtavyarshi Vartamanaha, Sankirtana, they will give up their misery, they will give up their sadness, they will give up their fatal diseases, and all these things will happen. So we have to remember that the Narayana Shabda that we are going to pronounce is not an end in itself, because we have to continuously pronounce, and someday, by the grace of the Lord, immediately, when the time occurs, then we will have the vision of the Supreme Lord. Then all these things will definitely occur. But that may not happen immediately. It may take longer time. But this is what my Acharya mentioned to me when this shloka used to be explained by him. But this will generally not be explained by the other discourse givers of Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya for obvious reasons. Of course, we respect all of them. But this is the inner information that my Acharya gave me, and we have to all appreciate it. That's what I feel. Then one more very beautiful pramana. Narayaneti shabdosti vagasti vashavartini tathapi narake ghore patantiti kimadbhutam. Very beautiful shloka which says, the word called Narayana exists, and we are endowed with the speech box, which I would like to put it as the speech box, which is within our control. So we have total control over our speech, and also the word Narayana exists. Even then, tathapi narake ghore patanti kimadbhutam, even then, people actually fall in the severe places of hell. They go to the severely miserable planets of the hell. What is this? How is it possible? Which means, even though the word Narayana, which can be pronounced, is in our own hands, it's well under our control, we don't do it, due to which all people who don't do it actually go to hell. That means the Narayana Shabda is so powerful that it can deliver a person from the samsara and land him in moksha or liberation. One more very beautiful statement. Kintatra bahubhir mantraihi, kintatra bahubhir vrataihi, namo narayanayeti mantras sarvartha sadhakaha. What is the use of so many mantras? What is the use of so many vratas? There are hundreds or thousands of mantras. Hundreds of vratas are there. Why are people enamored of these things? When the mantra Namo Narayanaya or Om Namo Narayanaya is, as we chant it, it can bestow everything that is required by human being. When it is so, why do people go after other mantras, go after other vratas or vows, etc.? So you can give up everything else and rest on or focus on the Narayana Nama and also the Ashtakshara Mahamantra only. That is sufficient for a person to get everything that is required here and hereafter. That is what the shloka says. Ityadihalale Vedartha Upabrahmanangalairikkira Swaprabandhangalile Palavinangalinam Idai Shlaghitte Kondadahayane Vedartha Vishadikarana Pravrittarana Vyasadi Paramarishihanam Virumbinarhal. Very beautiful statement. So there is a statement in the Puranas which says, Itihasa Puranabhyam Vedam Samupa Brahmaye. So the Itihasas and Puranas, they are to be used as known as Upabrahmana of the Vedas. So what does the word Upabrahmana mean? Upabrahmana means Tadartha Vishadikaranam, explaining in detail the meaning of those words, of those Vedic passages. So all the shlokas of the rishis that we have just read and explained, Ityadihalale Vedartha Upabrahmanangalairikkira Swaprabandhangaline. So these are authored by the sages like the Ramayana, Mahabharata and all the Puranas, Upapuranas, etc. And also the Smriti works like Manusmriti, etc., which unequivocally or categorically state the supremacy of Lord Narayana. Vedartha Vishadikarana Palavidangalilum Ittai Shlaghitte Kondaduhayane Shlaghitte Kondusholluhayane. They have in no uncertain terms and explicitly mentioned about the greatness of the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. And what are the sages doing there? Vedartha Vishadikarana Pravrittarana Vyasadi Paramarishihanam Virumbinarhal. So Vyasa, Valmiki and so many other people. Because even Valmiki says, Sahapatnya Vishalakshya Narayana Upagamati. Very beautiful. Even Rama, when he was about to take the vow of being coronated the next day, on the previous day, he was asked to perform the vows which involve the worship of Lord Narayana. So though Rama himself is the incarnation of Narayana, from the point of view of his being a human being as per the conditions put forth by Ravana, where he would not be killed by any person other than a human being. So Rama says, Atmanam Manusham Manye Ramam Dasharathatmajam. When Brahma comes and propitiates him as Sita Lakshmi Bhavan Vishnu, you are the incarnation of Lord Vishnu, and Sita is none other than Lakshmi. He says, Rama says, Atmanam Manusham Manye Ramam Dasharathatmajam. I deem myself to be Rama, who is the son of Dasharatha, a human being. But it's not so. Even Ravana partially realized Rama as being the incarnation of Narayana. He says, after Kumbhakarna is killed, Ravana exclaims, Yasya vikramamasadya rakshasa nidhanangataha tammanye raghavam veeram narayana manamayam. Who is this Rama? Who, coming to whom? Coming to whose valor? Becoming the aim of, becoming the victims of whose valor? So many demons have been killed. I think this Rama is none other than Narayana, Lord Narayana himself. That's what Ravana partially realizes. That is how Ravana partially realizes the greatness of Rama. And then Mandodari, that is the wife of Ravana, having had the darshan, or having seen, to put it in the proper way, having seen Rama after Ravana is killed, says, Tamasah paramodhata shankha-chakra gadadharaha Srivatsavaksha nityashrihi adayashashvato dhruvaha. Who is this Rama? He is beyond the tamas or darkness. And he is Lord Narayana, who is having Shankha, Chakra, Gada, having the Srivatsavaksha, has the divine Srivatsa on his heart. Ajayaha Shashvataha Dhruva, who cannot be defeated by anybody. So even Valmiki, in no uncertain terms, mentions about the Lord Vishnu as Narayana and him as the supreme person. There are several other instances also. But these are a few instances where Valmiki uses the word Narayana itself, which is very, very beautiful and enjoyable. So it is Shlagit Palavidangadilum Mitta Shlagit Kondadhayale. So in several places they have mentioned about the greatness of the Narayana, word Narayana, and also the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. So they have, all the rishis have greatly accepted and enjoyed, and they themselves have attained fulfillment by using the word Narayana and also the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. So now we have seen how the rishis or sages have acclaimed the mantra. Then Manavada Mamuni, Swami Manavada Mamuni gives a huge list of how all the Alvars have beautifully acclaimed and worshipfully mentioned the word Narayana. So we have the concept of Tatsama and Tadbhava, that is slight variation of the word. So Narayana becomes Narana in Tamil. You have the word Narayana also and Narana also, which are both the same. And in Nammalvar's Thiruvazhamozhi, several times the word we have come across. Van Puhal Naranam Tinkadal Chere, Shelva Naranam Nashulkel. Van Puhal Naranam is in the very second dashaka of the first centum. He says Van Puhal Naranam. Then in the ninth Dashaka he says Shelvanaranam Nashulkelkanam. And then in the penultimate Dashaka he says Val Puhal Naranam Tabarekandu Hande. Yennum Padiyaha Adimadhyavasanamaha Nammalvar Arudichaihayanam. So in the beginning, in the middle, and also in the end. In all these places he has used the word Narayana. So Nammalvar has greatly acclaimed the word Narayana and indirectly the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. Then Periyalvar, very beautifully, he says, Naadanaharamam Nangariya Namo Narayana. In the Palland Divya Prabandha, which is the first Divya Prabandha to be chanted in the Nalayana Divya Prabandhams, which says, Manavalamamni says, Vedathukku Om என்று பதில். Just as we say Hari Om in the beginning of the Vedas. Similarly, before chanting any of the other Prabandhas, we have to chant the Tirupalland. There he says, Naadanaharamam Nangariya Namo Narayana. And then in the Periyalvar Tirumudi, Ovade Namo Narana Vinban. Every person should and can say without any hesitation, Namo Narana Narayana. Then, thus Periyalvar has said. Then we have Kulashekara Alvar who says, who is the author of the beautiful, most beautiful Mukundamala. Naatazhumbezha Narana என்று தொடங்கி நலந்திகழ் நாரணன். So I am not very familiar with all the Divya Prabandhas. But here he says, in the beginning he says, Nalantihal Naranan. In the end he says, in the beginning he says, Naatazhumbezha Narana. Both in the beginning and the end. That means there is no need to tell that they revere the Narayana mantra or Narayana Nama most. Then the Tirumazhi who says, Naan Muhanai Narayanan Padaittan, Naan Muhanam Tan Muhamai Shankaranaitan Padaittan, etc. That is how the Naan Mohan Tiruvandadi or the fourth Tiruvandadi in the Yerpa, that is the third 1000 of the 4000 Divya Prabandhas of the Tamil Vedas start. And he specifically mentions Yetteluthu Mooduvargal Vallarvanamaalave. Those who chant the Ashtakshara Mahamantra will attain everything in this world. And then, once again, another Alvar, he says, Naan Kande Kondain Narayana Innunamam Endru Upakramadashaile Urukkal Chunna Pole Enbattin Kal Cholli Narayana Omani Vannana Hanaya Ivarai Endru Tirumangayalvarum. So Tirumangayalvar story is known by all of you very beautifully. Even this particular episode is enacted in Melkote twice a year, very beautifully. So it is mentioned that the Lord who wanted to shower his grace on Tirumangayalvar, he once dressed as a groom along with his bride, who was none other than Shri or Lakshmi. They happened to pass by. And Tirumangayalvar, as usual, he tried to rob them. Not for any personal gain, but to feed Shri Vaishnavas as his wife Kumudavalli Nachar had ordained him to do if he were to marry her, or if she were to marry him rather. So at that time, when the Lord was passing by with his wife or consort, Goddess Lakshmi, Tirumangayalvar actually took away all the ornaments. But one ornament remained in the feet of the Supreme Lord, that is the the touring. So when the touring could not be removed easily, the Lord said, why don't you actually remove it with your teeth? Then immediately, Kaliyan or Tirumangayalvar, who was not known as Tirumangayalvar until then, he immediately bent down, and so if the touring has to be removed with the teeth, his head has to touch the feet of the Lord. As soon as his feet touched his head touched the feet of the Lord, he immediately had the realization of the Supreme Lord, and he said, beautiful, Vadinen, Vadi Varandinen Manattal, Perumbe, Perentuiridambel, Pirande. Very beautiful, beautiful, beautiful first 10 stanzas, where he says, I have undergone so much of misery. But now, Nadinen, Nadinam, Kande Konden, Narayana Innunnamam. After seeking for several years, now I have realized that your name is Lord Narayana. Your name is Narayana. Nam Kande Konden. Now I have realized that you are none other than Narayana, and your name is Narayana. Very, very beautiful occasion. And as I mentioned in Melkote, twice a year, this episode is enacted even today, where the Tirumangayalvar he comes from behind, and the Lord is actually proceeding on the horse. And he, symbolically it is shown as he removes all the ornaments. And then when he is about to remove the touring of the Lord, he attains realization. He attains the vision of the Supreme Lord. Of course, it is done in several. Even in Tirumangamannan Vedpari is very famous in Tiruvalittirunari. It's beautiful episode. Even in Srirangam it is enacted. It's enacted away in several Divya-desams. And then immediately afterwards, the 10 ashrams, the first 10, that is Vadine and Vadis, chanted by all the people in unison. Very, very beautiful. It actually, a person, he may cry, he may actually feel elated, or anything can happen to him when he realizes the beauty and the greatness and also the veneratedness of the incident. And then finally in the Periya Thirumadal, which is his final Divya Prabandha, he says, he actually imitates or he repeats what Gajendra told as the words of Gajendra when he performed Sharanagati to the Lord. He says, Narayana O Manivanna Hanayai Varai Naridarikai. O Lord Narayana Manivanna, who resembles, whose divine Divya Mangala Vigraha, as we call it, whose divine form resembles that of the Mani. Varai and Naridarikai. Come and protect me. So the word Narayana is used. Thus, in the beginning and also in the end, he says, Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. Endre Tirumangayalvarum Upakramattodu Upasamharattodu Vashiyara Rudichaiheyanum. So in the beginning, in the end, and in all places, several places, he quotes the word Narayana. Then, Male Kondu Namo Naranavinnum Shonmale Katrin Indrum Naranavin Oduvarke Murende Indrum Yanachudaru Vilaketine Naranarke Naranan Namang Tannamangal Ahalkanden Narananikanden Indrum Namam Palashulli Narayana Innum Mudalalvarhalam Marudichaiheyanum. Very beautiful instance once again where all the first three Alvars, namely the Vaihi Alvar, Purat Alvar and Pei Alvar. In their first three Tiruvandadis, I think you know the story of them, how the beautiful, beautiful story. I will not go to repeat it. So they have in several places of their Divya Prabandhas mentioned the name Alvar and propitiated the Lord. And finally, Marar Mayaru Varamadinanam Maruninan Yengirapadiye Nirhetuka Bhagavat Katakshattale Samadhikata Samastavastu Vastavarana Alvar Hedellam Virumbinarhal. Thus, by means of the causeless divine grace of the Supreme Lord, they could understand the tattva of all the entities in this world. That is the Alvars. So all the Alvars have, irrespective of their age, their time, and other considerations, have beautifully mentioned the name, not to mention of Andal, who says, Narayanane Namakke Paretharuvam, etc. Beautiful, once again. So that itself can form a thesis, probably where all the word Narayana has come in all the Divya Prabandhas. Somebody might have already done research. If not, it's a worthwhile topic to take up. So thus we have seen the Vedangalum, Rishihalum, Alvarhalum, Acharyarhalum, Virumbinarhal. So itara mantrangalai anadarittu ittaye tantamakku tanjamaha anusandhittu upadesha velainum. So they have not given the prominence given to this mantra to any other mantra. And not only they have instructed others, they have themselves used it as the only mantra that will protect themselves. So they have preached what they practiced, they have practiced what they preached. Therefore, Tantamai Patti Navarahalakkum Ittaye Ujjivana Hetuvaha Upadeshikka Poruhayare. So not only they have mentioned themselves, those who are their own followers, for them also they have, without any hesitation and with all good intentions, with the welfare of their own disciples in mind, they have instructed this mantra only to their disciples, all the Alvars. Avvalvarhalukku pin chendra acharyarhal ellarum virumbinarhal engai. Therefore, we are all the disciples of the Alvars only, especially Nammalvar. Because it was Nammalvar who bestowed all the Divya Prabandhas to Nathamuni as per the tradition, as per the history of Vaishnavism, which I am not going to elaborate now, because I think most of you know about it. Therefore, Alvar Hadakni Pin Chandra Acharya Hadallaram, all the Acharyas, right from the Nathamuni, etc., all the Acharyas who followed the Alvars, they also very beautifully and very sincerely accepted this, and they also adapted this mantra in their lives. Ittal mantra antarangalukkaattilli mantrattukkundanava vaibhavam sollittaitu. So by all these, what we have just seen, the greatness of this mantra, the uniqueness of this mantra over all the other mantras has been explained well. That is how Swami Manavada Mamani concludes the commentary on this Churnika. So this completes the 13th Churnika. The 14th Churnika is Vachya Prabhavam Polan Vachaka Prabhavam. It's a new topic which we will continue to discuss and understand in the next session. Thank you very much. Feedback, questions, discussions, we can have briefly.
Swami, we've heard from some other people that there are other sections of Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam where they are not actually giving Astakshara mantra the way it is given in the Upanishads, but they suggest for different sections of society other mantras like Namo Narayana, or even just Narayana, or Am Namo Narayana. Can you comment?
Yeah, that is regarding the Channacharya Sampradaya, we give it along with it is given along with the Pranava, that is Om. Whereas it is not given in as Om, but This I think we have discussed in the earlier classes, because for certain people the Pranavas, giving the Upadesha of the Pranava is not advised as per the Vedic norms. Therefore, it is given as Am Namo Narayana. See, if you only Namo Narayana, it doesn't become Ashtakshara, it will become Saptakshara, which is a great drawback, because the number 8 is also very, very, very important. So 8 is a very important number as far as the spiritual aspects of human beings are concerned. That is another, once again, a huge science. It's called the science of numerology. Of course, nowadays people misuse it and misquote it and all those things. But numbers have a very, very significant role to play, because that is why even the Ashtakshara, we call it as we number it. Even the Gayatri, we number it. And even the Ashtakshara, while chanting, we have numbers. Do it 8 times, 10 times, 18, 24, 48, 108, 1008, etc. So, only Namo Narayanaya is not advisable. So, it is Am Namo Narayanaya or Om Namo Narayanaya. But Am Namo Narayanaya is given for the Shudras as well as the ladies in the Padagalai Sampradaya. That I have already explained. I think we have discussed about it earlier. But if you want to discuss once again, we can do that briefly.
So, okay. So sometimes some of the quotes that you've given have extolled the greatness of the name Narayana.
Yes.
Yes. So the name Narayana is great. The Astakshara is also great. So,
yes.
But they're equally great, or the Astakshara is greater than the name Narayana.
When the name Narayana itself is great, the Astakshara becomes greater in the sense it encapsulates the word Narayana also, along with some other more aspects. Therefore, it is more greater. You can say greater, but that doesn't mean that the word Narayana is less than the Ashtakshara Mahamantra. So you have to understand it in a particular context.
Right. Okay. So but Narayana is 4 syllables, and Namo Narayana is 6 syllables, and Namo Narayanaya is 7 syllables. But Am Namo Narayana or Om Namo Narayana is the full 8 syllables.
Yes.
There's some advantage for 8 syllables.
Yes.
Okay. And you were speaking about the fact that when somebody says, "Have you seen God?" people forget that they have seen God, or they don't realize when they go to the temple that they actually see God in the Ashavataram. So, is the efficacy of chanting Astakshara or the name Narayana dependent upon our realization of the Lord?
No, you get the realization of the Lord by constant chanting. That is the beauty of it. That is the way that is the means to get the realization of the Lord.
So the mantra itself is powerful, doesn't depend upon our realization. The power of the mantra.
No, to get the realization, you have to chant the mantra. That is how it is. Because after realization, you may do it. That is not prohibited, of course. But the main intention itself is to realize.
Right, but in order to chant the mantra properly, we have to have the mantrartha. We have to know what the meaning of the mantra.
You know, in an abstract manner, you know it, but you have not realized. But because if you have already realized, then why do you chant again? Of course, you may do it as Bhagavad Prityartha later. But as of now, it is the means. It is the means to attain realization.
Right. So then you were mentioning about Tirupalanda, and I believe that Tirupalanda is considered a separate prabandha by Tenacharya Sampradayam, but is considered part of another prabandha by Deshika Sampradaya.
No, I don't think so.
No?
Tirupalanda is separate prabandha, Periyalvar Tirumudi is separate prabandha. In that thing, I don't, with regard to that, I don't think there is any difference of opinion.
I see. Okay. Somebody is asking, is there, so, but just back to this idea of Om Namo Narayana and Om Namo Narayana, there are certainly going to be some pramanams in Dharma Shastras that ladies and Sudras should not chant pranava. But is there any, what is the pramana therefore for Tenacharya Sampradaya that you can give that?
There are several works that are dealing with the controversy, which I think it's not so relevant today, because in those days people were really chanting the mantra, taking it seriously, and all those things. But nowadays, even for example, now even I am actually realizing so much by sharing this. I would not like to say I'm teaching and you are being instructed. It is the sharing of thoughts, I would like to say like that. So now even after when I study, I feel really impressed. But after 5 or 10 minutes, I get involved in worldly aspects. So I would like to say how the ignorance takes over us, or it has taken us over actually. Even though we see all these people have mentioned, Alvars have mentioned, Acharyas have mentioned, the sages have mentioned. But do we have the single-minded devotion towards Ashtakshara and give up everything else? We are so much enamored about the material world, about our families, wife, children, etc. We means, generally I am telling, including me for that matter. So we have not realized it. We have very partially understood the greatness based on the works. Suppose I will give an example. Suppose a person is there who is very much after money, and a person offers him, he will say, I will give you $1 million per month if you do all the works that I say in a reasonable manner. What will he do? He will give up everything and he will take up the job that gives him $1 million per month. So we should actually, my Acharya used to say that. So having studied now, I have explained this based on the work of Manohar. But do I really realize and do I give up everything and do the Ashtakshara Mahamantra only? So that is what called as Dridha Adhyavasaya in Sampradaya. Do I have that Dridha Adhyavasaya that even if I don't do anything else and I concentrate totally on Ashtakshara Mahamantra, my daily needs, my worldly needs and my otherworldly needs will be taken care of? It's not so easy. Do you agree or not?
Yeah, sure, of course.
So now I have explained
there's theory and there's practice. There's theory and practice.
So after reading this, if I am doing it 10 times a day, I may do it 100 times, or if I am doing, I may do 500 times. But have I given up everything? Have I given up my being enamored of the world, about the gadgets, about my family, about money and all the worldly things? No. So that means it has not created that type of an effect on me still, which is the result of my past deeds, past karmas, etc. So gradually, by increasing the japa, gradually the worldly things have to go. It's not as many other people generally, my Acharya says, I will not say, because I am not competent to say that. My Acharya says many times in discourses, they say, oh, you tell the word Narayana, immediately you go to moksha. Of course, the greatness of the Narayana Mahamantra is so great that Immediately it can deliver. But who are you? Have you been able to realize that and then do? Then definitely it will happen. But it's not easy. It's not as easy as it is mentioned by people. Generally, people when they give discourses. That doesn't mean we actually personally say this person is wrong and or that person is wrong. It's not so simple. And I will say that with regard to me. So if you ask me tomorrow or next week, if you ask me, Alvar, you have told so much about, you have explained the greatness of the word Narayana and Ashtakara Mahamantra. Have you realized that it can give you everything, and have you given up your own efforts with regard to worldly things? If I have to tell the truth, I have to tell no. So that is what it is.
So somebody is asking in the chat that they want to know, is it possible for you to show the correct procedure for chanting of Astakshara? Because we read in books there might be some we have to be in a certain situation, and we have to perform certain yasas and dhyanas and everything, and to do it correctly.
That is along with Anganyasa and Karanyasa, it is to be performed. Then my guru used to say it will increase the efficacy. So that we will discuss some other time.
Right. So but you're perfectly prepared to explain all the japangas and all these things.
I can tell what little I know. That much definitely I can share. There is no problem.
Very good. And then
once again, this is not a matter of just telling for 1 year, 5 years. In the Brahma Sutras, it says, prayana tatrapi drishtam. Until the person gives up this body, he has to constantly do it. So if the person has not had realization, he has to do it for realization. If the person already has realization, then to consummate that realization, he has to do. So that is why even Madhvacharya very beautifully says, Santatam chintaye anantam antakale visheshata. So automatically, if you are in the spiritual path, especially the Vaishnava path, automatically you will do it. So it's like a catch-22 situation. If you are interested in the spiritual path, you will do it. If you do it, you will become interested in the spiritual path or the Vaishnava path. So though it's like a catch-22, it's like that only. You cannot help it. I used to ask my Acharya. So unless a person chants the mantra, he will not get realization. Unless he gets realization, he will not chant, then what to do? No, it's not like that. It is a catch-22 situation only. But gradually, based on the Upadesha of our Purvacharyas or one's own Acharya, you do now, if I am doing 10 times, you do 50 times. If you are doing 50, you do 100. If you do 100, you do 500. Gradually, you increase and gradually realization starts coming.
So also somebody privately in the chat, they were asking me the difference in the mantra for Shudras and ladies. But I think you already covered that. You're already discussing about it.
My suggestion in this regard is, you go by your Acharya. Don't worry about the the differences of opinion.
So there might be there's a lot of value to Shishtachara also. That
Yes.
In your family and your Acharya.
Om Namo Narayana, Om Namo Narayana. Both have their own valid reasons. So there is no need to quarrel, because from a particular one point of view, this has been mentioned. From another point of view that has been mentioned, both are valid in different contexts. So today, ultimately what matters is how many times you do the japa, or how many times you do the chanting. You may understand the views of both the schools, but that doesn't make any difference as far as your chanting is concerned. However, your Acharya has taught you, you do that. That is how you have to practically adopt it. There is nothing wrong in knowing the underlying causes between the two schools, why there are differences of opinion. But there is no use glorifying the difference of opinion, because a person really interested in engaging in the Vaishnava path will not be worried about those differences. He wants, his aim is more important rather than entering into these
Controversies.
differences of opinion or quarrels about it. Quarrel is a very bad word. I would not like to do that.
Let's say small differences of opinion.
Yes.
So these are only just small details, and we should look at the broader picture. And
yes,
the main thing
by entering into these quarrels, what do we achieve? Is there anything that you achieve? No. Earlier, people used to do it for the sake of gratifying their ego, or actually condemning some other person due to other things. But that thing is against the very definition of a Shri Vaishnava. So definitely, even Manavada Bhamani or Vedanta Deshika, they have not engaged in these things. Later, people have mentioned this opinion and said this. There is another opinion also, but this opinion seems to be more balanced. But no Acharya has very specifically refuted other Acharyas in the Shri Vaishnava philosophy. That has been the trend only in the last 100-200 years.
Swami, I'm so much used to saying Om, Om, Om. And after these classes, I came to know that I have to say So my question is, without my knowledge, I keep saying Om, Om, Om. Is it a sin, or am I going?
No, it's not a sin. Definitely, you can say that. Yes. There is nothing wrong in saying that.
Okay. So, thank you.
Mangalasasana parairmadacharya purogamaihi sarvaishcha purvairacharya satkritaya stu mangalam.